Everybody. You know, education and advocacy work by tens of thousands of North Carolinians and hundreds of thousands of Americans has brought us to this session and this day, and it can finally pay off this year. But only if we have a united, aggressive but respectful and sustained effort by all of us. I wear a bracelet or a whatever we call these things, band on my hand and have for years, and it's what motto we use at the Justice Center, and what it simply says is what you do matters. And never is that a better saying than what we're doing today. What you do, what you're going to do today, and what you're going to do until these bills pass or they're ensconced in a budget bill is going to matter. So let's take a look quickly, because we only have 10 minutes, at talking to the legislators this afternoon. We're going to start with the basics. We've got a House and a Senate, 50 senators, 120 representatives, and bills to become law, whether it's Bill 5 or 3 or other bills, have to pass both houses of the legislature. But there's a second way, and we should know that, and that is Medicaid bills or Medicaid expansion may be decided and included not just in its own bill, but in the budget, which will be in May and June of this year. And obviously, given the dollars that are going to be needed over the course of time to help fund, that's going to be important. So don't give up any hope if you don't see these two bills moving immediately, because it may be that they're going to end up in a budget bill. As you know, every one of us is represented by one senator from our district and one representative in the House. And the question is sort of how you find the person or the people you're going to talk to if you don't know who you're going to be talking to. One of the good things about this legislature is it's got a great website, and we're going to talk about using some of the data off that website right now. If you look and you pull in on www.ncleg.net, at the top you see on the right-hand side where it says District Representation. That'll pop you into this next slide where it says Find Your Legislators, and you'll click into that sublink, which will take you to this slide. And here you're going to enter two things, whether you want your House of Representatives elected rep or your senator. Click on that and then enter your home address, and that will then take you to who your legislators, your House and your Senate members are. And they will tell you the district and who they are. So that gets you to the person or people that you need to be talking to. When you get there, here's what the page is going to look like on each legislator. This happens to be Representative Rosa Gill from Wake County. And there's an important series of information here. First thing, it tells you where their legislative office is. And we're going to talk about the two buildings that exist and the easy way to find their offices. It gives you their phone number and mailing address. But equally important is what it says on the bottom. It tells you whether this representative is one of the new representatives, and there are over a quarter of the representatives are first or second term in the House, and a fairly similar number in the Senate. So there are a lot of new legislators, just as there are a lot of very veteran legislators. But that's helpful for you to know to tailor your comments to them. Second, it tells you their occupation. One of the things we're going to talk about in a minute is finding a rapport with your representative, and occupation is one of those ways to do it. If you're a teacher, a former teacher, a teacher in the family, you have an immediate rapport in with Representative Gill. Tells you her other phone number, which is her cell phone number probably, and it gives you her email, which you'll need for follow-up conversations later. Next slide. I want to tell you just one other logistic thing before we talk a little bit about developing the relationship with the legislator. There are now, for the first time in North Carolina's history, metal detectors to enter the buildings. So like any metal detectors, the more you can sort of put away and not carry with you that could click it off, the quicker the lines will go. But with hundreds of people going through, a little patience is going to really be needed because they're not increasing staff. There's usually only 2 or 3 folks at each of the metal detectors. That's in each building. So you're just going to have to be prepared to go through that quickly, and like any metal detector, just make it as easy as you can. Now, I want to talk for a minute before this is a slide that tells you in the legislative building, everything looks the same. It is multiple courtyards that all look the same, so We used to say for new legislators, if you can figure out where your office is and where the bathrooms are in the first 6 weeks, you have accomplished something. So don't get worried about that. I want to talk for a minute before we go to the next slide about talking to your legislator. In this way, I always think it's very important to sort of map out the few minutes you're going to have with your legislator. So aside from the information that we saw on their homepage, their occupation, their terms in the House or Senate, you might want to go on Google and just look to see a little bit about your legislator that you're going to talk to. Where did they get their education from? What are their interests? They have a campaign website. Go look and see if Medicaid was one of the things they talked about, so that you have some ability to develop in your first minute with the legislator, aside from introducing yourself, some rapport. If they went to Carolina and you love Carolina sports, talk about the game last night. If they went to Duke, don't talk about the game. But find the rapport that you can have with them, whether it's an interest, maybe they're interested in the arts and you're interested in the arts. Maybe they were a former, as I said, with Rosa Gill, teacher, and you're a former teacher. It's a connection, and we want to connect personally with the legislator before we deliver the policy message. Second, you're only going to have a couple minutes, and my suggestion is you have 3 points lined up, 1, 2, and 3, and you've really got it on your fact sheet that you have. First, you want to tell them what you're here for on Medicaid expansion and closing the coverage gap. And you're going to say North Carolina is one of only 14 states left in the country that doesn't have that, with the 6th largest uninsured population in the United States. And second, if we expand Medicaid, it will cover 500,000 plus North Carolinians. And second, and the next point will be, it will boost the economy of our state for tens of thousands of jobs, reduce the cost of insurance and health care for everyone, and will add to the moral strength, the economic strength of our state. Whatever your couple talking points are, know what those 2 or 3 are. You're not going to have time to go past 3, and nobody's going to remember past 3. So line them up. But remember, the information you're looking at with your legislator will tell you which is the better talking point first. It may be a moral issue. It may be for them a bottom line issue. It may be for them that they're from part of the state there's a lot of unemployed people in some way. Find the best talking point for them. And then you have your sheet that you're going to leave with them and your contact information that you're going to leave with them, and you're going to follow up, and you're going to follow up tonight. And your follow-up tonight's going to be the old-fashioned way. We are going to write handwritten letters to our legislator thanking them for their time. Not an email, not a text, a good old-fashioned couple-sentence handwritten letter. Because as a legislator, I will tell you, whenever I got a letter, they were rare enough that they always took priority in my office. I knew the person deeply cared. The second best thing is obviously to take time to call and have a personal conversation. The third is a personalized email. The fourth, if you have no time because you've got 100 other things in your life, at least do a text to them. But some thank you, and that continues the relationship you will have, that you can follow up on every month and say, I know you're working on this issue. Again, thank you for seeing me last month, and just keep working at it and give them some encouragement. All of that's important. Last thing to talk about with regard to your visit today that we can get done in 10 minutes. You're going to have, and we're going to be doing scenarios in a minute, 3 types of legislators. You're going to have the legislator who's with you. It's like, I know all about this, I'm with you, I campaigned on it, tell me what I need to do. Then you're going to have a second set of legislators who really are new, potentially, or haven't gotten engaged on this issue. That information you're giving them really is important. You're educating them. And then third, you have legislators who've been opposed to this issue for some time, and we're still going to be respectful with them, but we're going to try to get a different approach to them to get them to think about it. And don't be discouraged about that. The last thing I'm going to talk about before we finish up this session is that you may not get to see your legislator. What you may, however, be able to see is their legislative assistant. Each office has a legislative assistant. Treat them as if you are talking to the legislator, because the substance you give them and how you impart that substance will be communicated to the legislator. And too many people come in there, if they don't get to talk to the legislator, they pawn off, or they get discouraged, or they don't talk nicely to the staff. And all that gets conveyed to the legislator is this person came in to talk about Medicaid and they were just mean to me, or they just dismissed me. We don't do that. We don't want to be dismissed. They shouldn't be dismissed. They are like talking to the legislator. They are important just as we are important. Now, this is the last point for this session, and that is there are two buildings. When you get to your legislator's webpage and you see or cite what their office building number is, here's how it works. The first building on the left is the main legislative building where the chambers are. It's on the front. It actually is, you'll be facing it when we leave the museum. Any office number that ends, that is in the 1000, 1100, 1200, 1300, 1400, the thousands series is in that building. If the numbers are in the 3, 4, 5, or 600 series, the 100 series, they are in the legislative office building, which is behind it, and it is a 6-story building right over there, right behind on the left side. It would be my strongest advice that you go to the building that has that number, because if you go in the front building but they're in the back building, you have to go through 2 metal detectors, and who wants to do that? So find which building they're in and go in that entrance. It will save everybody time. With that, let me just close by saying this. I was in the legislature in the majority for 8 years and in the minority for 5 years. And I worked with the White House as a state legislator to help pass the Affordable Care Act. I believe that other than home and security, the most important thing that we can give each other is the ability to have good health for ourselves and our family. For the first time since 2011, this can actually happen. And you can be a big part, will be a big part of moving it forward. Margaret Mead once said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." And I leave you with one story, and that is the Alfred Nobel paradigm. Nobel was the inventor of dynamite. And one day, his twin brother died, and a Swiss newspaper got the obituary wrong, and they thought that they were writing an obituary for Alfred Nobel. And it read this way: Alfred Nobel, who invented a way to kill more people faster than anyone in history, died yesterday, a wealthy man. And unlike the rest of us, Alfred Nobel got to read his obituary and to decide that is not how I want to be remembered. And so from that day forward, he devoted his entire fortune to humanity and justice and social good. And so today everyone remembers that he is the Alfred Nobel of the Nobel Prizes, and hardly any of us remember he was the inventor of dynamite. By your work here today and your sustained effort until we get Medicaid expansion and coverage for all in this state, you will not be any wealthier in a material sense, but you will be remembered for every child you help, for every family for which you get coverage, and as keepers of this nation's soul. Go get them.